Beautiful Monday morning in the city of Lagos. Good morning and welcome to Today in the News here on Vanguard Life. My name is Ololade Adeomi. A flip into the newspapers for today, starting with Vanguard newspaper. Major headline on the Vanguard says Dangote, NUPENG face off. Federal government moves to avert nationwide strike. Summons feuding parties to emergency meeting today. Oil workers disown direct trucking drivers association. Say body creation of union busters. NLC rallies state councils, industrial unions for showdown. Falana asks the federal government to call Dangote to order. Major story can be found on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Top banner says UN Atiku Obi Ndeme rage over killing of 63 in Borno, demand probe as Governor Zulum visits affected communities again. NLC, federal government workers demand minimum wage review. Lower banner says local government funds Osun NULGE warns OAGF a CBN overplot to preempt Supreme Court. Interest rate manufacturers look beyond banks for survival. Away from the Vanguard newspaper, straight into the Punch newspaper. Major headline on the Punch says NUPENG versus Dangote. Union insists on strike, meets federal government. Others today. Labour minister begs union to shelve industrial action. Marketers vow to short filling stations. Back NUPENG. Major story can be found on page 21 of the Punch newspaper. Top banner says lending rates may fall as inflation eases, says CBN. Natasha to resume Senate after London trip, says lawyer. And lastly, on the Punch newspaper, Naira strengthens to 1,514 per dollar, nears 5-month high. Away from the Punch, straight into the Nation newspaper. Major headline on the Nation says troops are eat terrorists in nationwide crackdown. No need for strike during talks. Education minister tells ASU Cardoso when CBN will sustain monetary tightening policy. Top banner says new customs duty exemption rate takes off. Minister to meet NUPENG others. Why Lagos, Abuja top destinations for FDI. Naira rallies on sustained forex growth. Away from the Nation, straight into the Guardian newspaper. Major headline on the Guardian says National Grid faces 5.6 trillion naira revenue loss as premium customers exit. Top banner says Dangote, NUPENG face off. Federal government urges caution. Custom exempts $300 parcels from tax as cargo owners decry duty payments disruption. Prominent Nigerians push for electoral reforms ahead of 2027 polls. Lower banner says Army neutralizes 4 terrorist arrests, 64 suspects in nationwide operation. Insecurity. Northern leaders demand state of emergency, sack of service chiefs. Parents groan as schools resume Imo outlaws some practices. That's what we have on the front page of our newspapers this morning. Join us for a quick analysis right after the break. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Today in the News here on Vanguard Live. Joining me in the studio today for a quick analysis is Mr. Aliu Mohammed, CEO Magna Communications. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you. So we're looking to a top story for today. The Nigerian Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG, has announced an indefinite nationwide strike effective Monday, September 8, 2025, in protest against the Dangote Group's alleged anti-union practices, monopolistic agenda, and indecent industrial relations strategies. The union claims that Dangote Refinery enforces policies barring drivers from joining any oil and gas union, including NUPEG, which it argues violates Nigerian constitutional rights and international labor convention. Additionally, the Nigerian Labour Congress (NLC) has expressed full support for NUPENG, calling the dispute a critical battle for workers' rights and dignity. You agree with the call for indefinite strike, by NUPENG in protest against the alleged anti-union practices and monopolistic agenda of Dangote?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I am not in support of strikes. These are issues that can be resolved through dialogue. Yes, Dangote has been accused of engaging in anti-union activities like barring its workers from being members of NUPENG and other unions. That is what you get strictly in a monopolistic economy, an economy where one person dominates a sector. You can't rule it out. You can't rule it out. But if you look at the past records of Dangote, it's always been like that. They don't allow their workers to join any union as much as possible. They monopolize their workers and ensure that they are treated as if they are not part of the other workers in this country. That is what you get when the laws of the land are not effectively implemented. There is no law in this country that stops any worker from joining the union. Even government workers have their unions, not to talk of private workers in private employment that belongs to NUPENG, Pengasan, and all that you have. We can, but only appeal to Dangote to embrace unionism, because what he is afraid of is a possible gang up of workers, and it is part of the monopolistic instincts of private companies in this country. It's not only Dangote. Most private workers are afraid to allow their staff to become members of any union because of threats of strikes and all that. But I don't know why any employer should be afraid of strikes. It's part of industrial development in any part of the world. Workers have their rights. They will always agitate for their rights. They have rights to salary increments. They have rights to good emoluments, and they always want to fight for these rights. Denying them that right is not only unconstitutional, but it is inhuman. And so, as for Dangote, I will conclude that it is the government that has given the company and its management a kind of preference in the order of industrial relations. Because if government had stepped in the past to allow them or to ensure that they follow the rules and allow their workers to get unionized, we won't be at this stage that we are. We can only appeal to Dangote to try as much as possible to treat its workers well, very well. When you have a company that is employing 3,000 workers, you cannot expect things to be perfect in such an organization. There will be some shortcuts here and there. So that is what we are getting in the case of Dangote.
So the federal government has actually intervened by summoning both parties to a meeting. What role do you think the government should play in this to settle the industrial dispute?
It is not unexpected that government has stepped in, because it is something that could lead to a nationwide strike if not properly taken care of. If you look at the oil sector is just stabilizing of late. We've been having series of crises in that sector in the past. We had the high fuel price, which led to demonstrations all over the country. But fortunately, God stepped in through the introduction and the licensing of private refineries, which brought in Dangote and some other oil companies. And we are beginning to reap the results of that deregulation now. And I think we should be able to capitalize on it, step forward as a nation, and ensure that we run an oil sector that is devoid of sharp practices and any other thing that could tarnish the image and reputation of our dear country.
Okay, so what are the possible outcomes that can come out from this particular meeting we're about to have today?
Well, since the federal government has stepped in, I am seeing a possible reconciliation and shelving of the so-called strike. I don't foresee a situation where that strike will continue after the intervention of the federal government, because the federal government itself knows the implication of allowing workers to go on strike at this time where the entire nation has been enjoying a peaceful workers government relationship. I'm sure the government will not want a situation where there will be an industrial action in that sector. It's a very sensitive sector. It's the sector that gives money to the country, by extension, some very prominent Nigerians.
Okay, so you spoke about implications. What are some of the implications
Of
if we
going on
decide to
strike.
continue with this nationwide strike?
The implication is that the country is again likely to be grounded. And you know what happens. The economy suffers, individual businesses will suffer. You can only know the beginning of a crisis. You can't say this is how it will end. So as a management person, I believe that when you are looking forward to a crisis situation, the best thing is to avert it, because you can never say the extent of that crisis if you allow it to happen and fester.
So what step can both Dangote Group and NUPENG take to de-escalate the situation? And
to de-escalate it, they should embrace peace. They should go on the negotiation table as much as possible and ensure that they come up with very fruitful and acceptable agreements. That is my advice. But the truth of the matter is that there must be peace in the oil sector, because it's a critical sector in this country. And I'm sure government will not want to allow a situation where that sector will be embroiled in a crisis situation at this very critical time of our economy. Well, if I say that the economy is picking up, some will say no, but depends on the perspective at which you are looking at it. But it's been a stable economy in the past few months. It's been stable. There has not been fluctuation of prices. There has not been scarcity of petrol. There has not been scarcity of diesel. So I think we should build on the achievement that we have that we've had in the last 1 year or two. Let there be peace. Let there be stability. Because at the end of the day, if there is a crisis in the oil sector, all Nigerians, whether you are rich or poor, will be affected. So we should let this reign.
I look into a second story for today. The Northern Ethnic National Forum has called on President Bola Tinubu to declare a state of emergency on security and to immediately dismiss the nation's service chiefs. The forum cited escalating violence and leadership failures in addressing insecurity across northern Nigeria. Let's start with the current, security situation in northern Nigeria. How do you assess the current situation of security in northern Nigeria?
Well, I want to say we've had a little improvement. In those days, we used to have high casualty resulting from the crisis in the north. But of late, we've had a reduction in the casualty that we used to record. And just like we all know, the federal government is trying its best. But in situations like this, you cannot rule out selfish and personal interests. Some people who are making money from gun running, gun sales, and all that will never allow a crisis situation to stop. When they are making money from that crisis, they won't allow it to stop. They don't pray that it will stop because they are busy supplying arms and ammunition. Some people are making money from the killings that are happening in the north. That's the sad aspect of it. God has created Nigeria as a nation where we should live in peace. But unfortunately, we do not appreciate what God has given us in this country. We have so many resources here that can take care of the needs of everyone. But unfortunately, we've had selfish and greedy leadership in the past, and we still have that system in place today. I want to advise that whatever belongs to all Nigerians should be allowed to get to all Nigerians so that we can have a peaceful atmosphere to live in. If you sit down and look at the cause of banditry in this country, it's all because some people want to make money. You kidnap, you call for 200 million, you call for 500 million, you forget that there is somebody called God. What you get from kidnapping is nothing but blood money, and you cannot expect to live peacefully if you are not allowing peace to reign in the environment that you are. Because one day, the law will get at you. It's just a matter of time. So we must allow peace to reign in this country. God that has created Nigeria as a nation knows what he's doing. This nation is surviving. You know, we've gone through a lot as a nation. We had the civil war. We had coups. We had so many crises. Yet, we are still together as a nation. God has a reason for allowing that. Some other parts of the world, that country would have divided. It would have been divided into about 2 or 3 other countries. But God has been with us in this country. We've had very terrible situations, very terrible crises that could have broken the country. Don't forget the Civil War. We had the Civil War. We came out of it. We survived it. We came back together as a strong nation until today. It is God that is making Nigeria what it is, despite the evil machinations of some demons in human garb in this country. But the God that has been doing that for us will continue to sustain Nigeria as a nation.
The president has actually been urged, to declare a state of emergency and also, dismiss the service chief. Do you agree with this?
I don't think we are at the point of declaration of a state of emergency. We've not gotten to that. You don't declare a state of emergency because a few elements are trying to make money from an orchestrated bad situation. Do you know that kidnapping in any part of the world is usually orchestrated? It is no reason why there should be a state of emergency. Our military, our security architect should wake up and square up to the situation that we have in this country. We need loyal, determined, reliable military to quell the crisis that we are having. Nigeria is a blessed country. Some people are just trying to take over the country in their own selfish interest. But God Almighty won't allow that to happen. if people for their selfish ends are creating crisis in different parts of the country and you expect to have peace, it's a lie. It is not impossible. I mean, it is not possible for you to have peace when you walk towards a crisis situation in the place where you are living.
So the forum actually called for a cabinet reshuffle, of some of the current ministers. Do you agree with this? How do you think
What is the
current
basis?
ministers
No,
are
what is the
currently doing?
basis? What is the basis for that call? What has the sacking of ministers got to do with religion? I mean, the crisis in the north, or are the ministers the cause of the crisis? Let us ask ourselves this question. You don't just call for the sacking of ministers because you are expecting that you are expecting that when those ministers are sacked, you or somebody close to you will be appointed. You are already scheming to be a minister and waiting for the ministers that are there to get sacked. You don't just sack people. If you have a team that is, I won't say winning, that is trying its best, you don't sack that team. You know what it means to sack a whole team? You are bringing in a new team. They will sit down, study the files, study the situation, take about 3 months before they get used to the system. You are drawing back the hand of the clock by just saying, sack all the ministers. If you sack all the ministers, the new ones that are coming in will take about 3, 4, 5 months to get used to their new positions. And such a delay have its own effects on the economy and the general development of this country. So you don't just sack ministers. If you sack ministers, those who are there would go with a lot of things. I don't want to start accusing people of being corrupt, but we know what happens when a minister is living in this country. You know what happens. Then you now bring in another one that will start putting his nose everywhere to know where money will come out from. I don't know. You don't just sack ministers if there is no need for it. For now, I don't think there is any need for the sack of any minister. Let them continue with what they are doing. If they are doing well, fine. Except the minister is found wanting. I don't believe in just reshuffling of a cabinet for the purpose of doing it.
Okay, so let's end today with Mr. and Mrs. segment. Mrs. says, darling, Mr. Gabriel is an angel. Mr. says, because he gave you 50,000 naira, why don't you drop the Mr. and call him Angel Gabriel?
That's the right word, truly. That's the right word.
Thank you very much for
You're
joining us
most
today.
welcome.
That was Mr. Liu Mohammed, CEO Magnet Communications. Remember, you can follow us on all our social media platforms as seen on your screen, on our website at www.vanguardngr.com. My name is Ololade Adewumi. Have a lovely